What if I told you that one of the most effective ways to cool a house was discovered thousands of years ago and became so deeply buried by modern industry that most people have never even heard of it? No compressor, no refrigerant gas, no giant outdoor unit roaring in the summer heat. Just a pipe, a trench, and the stable temperature of the earth itself. 3,000 years ago, engineers in ancient Persia were already cooling buildings in the middle of desert heat, where summer temperatures exceeded 40 at Nordic, and they did it without electricity, without chemicals, and without any of the technologies we now treat as indispensable. They understood something simple that modern life has made us forget. A few meters below the surface, the earth stays cool. And when hot air spends enough time moving through that cooler soil, the soil pulls heat out of the air. That's the secret behind one of the oldest passive cooling systems ever devised. Today, this idea goes by different names: earth tube, earth air heat exchanger, Canadian well, climate battery. The names change, but the principle stays the same. The ground is a massive thermal reservoir capable of cooling a house almost for free. So the obvious question arises, if this works so well, why does almost no new house use this system? Why does everyone know all about central air conditioning, but almost nothing about underground cooling tubes? And why is this solution blocked, discouraged, or effectively rejected in so many parts of the United States? Throughout this video, you'll learn the physics, the history, the economic interests behind this silence, and how a homeowner could build a modern version of this ancient system. Long before air conditioning, ancient civilizations living in regions of extreme heat independently arrived at the same conclusion: the earth itself could be used to moderate temperature. In Persia, engineers built underground channels known as qanats, extensive systems dug into soil and rock to carry water over long distances beneath the desert. But these channels did more than move water. They also created cool underground pathways where air lost heat before entering the living spaces above. Then came the badgirs, or wind towers, tall structures designed to catch moving air and direct it downward toward underground chambers and channels. That air passed over cool surfaces, sometimes near water, sometimes through shaded tunnels, and came out far cooler than the scorching air outside. This wasn't primitive improvisation, it was applied thermodynamics. In places like Yazd, Iran, these systems still exist, and the wind towers still rise over the city skyline. Living proof that passive cooling wasn't just possible, but practical, durable, and elegant. UNESCO didn't recognize the Persian qanat systems as mere historical curiosities. They were recognized because they represented sophisticated engineering solutions, capable of functioning for centuries. And Persia wasn't an isolated case. The Romans applied similar logic in underground corridors and ventilated stone structures. In North Africa and various parts of the Middle East, underground chambers and air channels became common responses to extreme heat. In civilizations separated by geography and by time, the same truth kept reappearing. Deep underground stays stable while the surface burns. The earth below stays calm, and that's exactly the ancient principle that powers the modern earth tube. The technology may seem new, but at its core, it's simply reusing a very old discovery. When you work with the Earth's stable temperature, climate stops being an absolute enemy and becomes something architecture can intelligently moderate. Now, let's get into the mechanism itself. At a depth of roughly 1 to 3 meters, depending on climate and soil conditions, the Earth's temperature tends to stay relatively constant throughout the year. And while outside air can swing between freezing winters and suffocating summers, the soil at that depth changes very slowly. In many temperate climates, it stays around 10 degrees C to 16 degrees. Now imagine a summer afternoon at 35 degrees outside. The outside air is hot, dry, and harsh. Instead of pulling that air directly into the house, you route it through a long pipe buried underground. As the air travels through that pipe, the cooler surrounding earth absorbs its heat. By the time that air reaches the house, it can be far cooler than it was at the entry point. In winter, the process can work in reverse. Extremely cold air enters through the buried pipe and the earth itself gently warms it before it reaches the interior of the building. In other words, a single underground system can help cool in summer and preheat in winter. That's where the genius of the idea lies. The earth becomes the first stage of your thermal control system. And unlike a conventional HVAC system, the earth doesn't need to be switched on every time it works. In most cases, the only energy required is that of a small fan to move the air. Instead of running a compressor that draws thousands of watts, an earth tube can operate with a fan that uses only a tiny fraction of that. That's why this solution is so appealing. It's not magic, it's not experimental, it's simply heat exchange. Air moves, heat flows, the earth absorbs it. And when the design is done well, the performance can be impressive. Modern buildings around the world have already used underground air heat exchange systems to reduce heating and cooling loads, sometimes significantly. Schools, libraries, eco-centers, and research buildings have already incorporated buried pipes as part of their ventilation strategies. In the best cases, these systems reduce reliance on a mechanical air conditioning, lower energy consumption, and improve the performance of the rest of the HVAC system. At this point, any reasonable person asks the most obvious question. If this is real, ancient, and effective, why isn't it everywhere? The first answer is economic. Modern HVAC isn't just a technology, it's a massive industry. Equipment manufacturers, installers, maintenance companies, refrigerant suppliers, subscription filter replacement businesses, service contracts, spare parts, duct cleaning. An entire economy has been built around active climate control. Traditional air conditioning generates recurring revenue. Compressors break, motors wear out, capacitors burn out, gases leak, entire units need replacing, and service calls keep coming back season after season. An earth tube doesn't fit that model very well. And when buried correctly, the pipe itself can last decades. There's no outdoor condenser unit, no refrigerant circuit in the simplest air-based version. There's no expensive, predictable cycle of swapping out a compressor, replacing a machine, or staying locked into a specific brand mounted on the side of the house. That doesn't mean there's some cartoonish conspiracy with executives sitting in dark rooms trying to suppress underground pipes. The reality is usually simpler. Economic sectors tend to promote what they know how to sell, finance, regulate, advertise, and maintain. Anything that falls outside that model tends to get ignored until it becomes impossible to ignore. And for a long time, earth tubes were easy to ignore. They don't generate the same steady stream of maintenance. They don't create the same technological dependency. They don't feed the same chain of periodic replacement. In other words, passive solutions usually don't get the same market push as active ones. And that's one of the central reasons why a system this simple, this old, and potentially this useful remains absent from most modern construction. The second answer lies in regulation. In many US states, earth tubes aren't explicitly and directly banned. And what happens in practice tends to be more frustrating. They simply fall outside any clear framework. Building codes often don't include a clear section explaining how a residential underground air heat exchange system should be designed, tested, approved, inspected, or maintained. And when the code doesn't offer a defined path, inspectors tend to say no, not because the physics is wrong, not because the system can't work, but because almost no one wants to approve something that falls outside the most familiar technical language. Then comes the biggest technical objection of all: radon, moisture, and mold. These concerns are real and need to be taken seriously. Radon is a radioactive gas that can seep from the soil into buildings, and prolonged exposure poses a significant health risk. If an underground pipe system is poorly sealed, poorly installed, or placed in a high radon risk area, it can end up becoming an entry point for contaminated air. Moisture is another serious problem. When hot, humid air enters a cold, buried pipe, condensation can form inside the pipe. If that water sits there, especially in rough or corrugated tubing, mold, bacteria, and other biological problems can develop. A poorly designed earth tube can stop being a passive cooling solution and turn into an underground biological experiment. And this is exactly where many critics end the conversation. They say, "See, it's dangerous. That's why nobody uses it." But that's not the complete conclusion. The more honest conclusion is different. Poorly designed systems are dangerous. Well-designed systems can work very well. That distinction matters. The problem isn't necessarily the principle. The problem is the execution. And that's precisely where serious engineering comes in, not to dismiss the concept, but to fix the vulnerable points of the design. So if someone wanted to build an earth tube today, what would a truly serious version of this system look like? First, the homeowner would need to understand local conditions. Soil type matters, climate matters, groundwater depth matters, radon risk matters. Clay-rich, moist soils tend to transfer heat better than dry, sandy soils. A high water table can complicate excavation. In extremely humid climates, the practicality of direct air tubes can drop significantly because dehumidification becomes an even bigger problem than temperature itself. And in high radon areas, extra measures, or even a different system design, may be essential. Next comes the piping. This is exactly where many poor installations fail. The buried pipe needs to be smooth on the inside, durable, and completely sealed. Corrugated pipes are a poor choice because their ridges trap water, dirt, and biological growth. A serious system uses smoothbore piping, usually HDPE or PVC, with a diameter large enough to maintain airflow without excessive resistance. Next come two central factors: length and depth. The pipe needs enough underground length to exchange heat efficiently. If it's too short, the air won't stay in contact with the cool earth long enough. If it's too shallow, it will track the surface temperature too closely. If it's too deep, installation costs rise significantly. But perhaps the single most important element is drainage. A well-designed earth tube needs a slope so that condensation runs down to a collection point instead of sitting inside the pipe. That collected moisture needs to be drained safely. The air intake must be protected from debris, insects, and standing water. The system should include filtration. Access for inspection should be possible, and every buried joint needs to be carefully sealed. On the house side, the preconditioned air can be integrated into a ventilation system, an HRV, or a mechanical air distribution setup. In a well-designed home, the earth tube doesn't necessarily need to replace the entire HVAC system. Often, its smartest role is to reduce the load on the other systems, and that distinction matters. There's also an important alternative for anyone concerned about radon or mold, the closed-loop version. Instead of moving air directly through buried pipes, a closed-loop system circulates a liquid, usually water mixed with glycol, through an underground loop. That liquid then passes through a heat exchanger inside the house, where it helps temper the incoming air. The earth still provides the thermal benefit, but the house's air never travels directly through the ground. This greatly reduces contamination concerns and can fit more easily into existing mechanical setups. This approach may not offer quite the same simplicity as a direct air tube, but it resolves some of the more serious objections without giving up the main advantage, using the Earth's stable temperature. Now step back and look at the bigger picture. In many homes, heating and cooling represent the largest share of a building's energy use. HVAC is usually the heaviest energy load in the house, and yet most people have been trained to think only in terms of better machines, more efficient compressors, smarter thermostats, variable speed blowers, newer refrigerants. All of that matters, but it all starts from the same premise. The thermal control should depend, above all, on power-driven equipment. Earth tubes challenge that logic. They ask a different question. What if the building worked with the land before relying on machines? What if the soil beneath the house were treated as part of the thermal design? What if incoming air were naturally moderated before any expensive equipment had to act? That question becomes even more important in a world of rising heat, more expensive energy, and increasingly strained infrastructure. So why does all of this still sound like almost forbidden knowledge? Maybe because it doesn't fit neatly into the modern sales funnel. Maybe because building codes move slower than actual need. Maybe because passive systems are rarely promoted with the same force as active machines. Or maybe because the simplest solutions almost always seem too humble for a culture obsessed with complexity. A buried pipe doesn't look revolutionary. If anything, it looks almost embarrassingly simple. And yet, it's exactly that simplicity that gives it its strength. 3,000 years ago, people living in extreme climates discovered that the earth itself could cool the air. They built with patience, observation, and respect for natural physics. Today, we have better materials, better engineering data, better sealing methods, better fans, better filters, better monitoring, and a far more solid understanding of the health risks. In other words, today we have everything we need to build these systems better than ever. The real question isn't whether the physics works. It does. The real question is whether modern building culture is willing to accept a solution that generates less recurring profit, demands smarter design, and forces us to remember that not every problem needs to be solved with a louder machine. Buried just a few meters beneath your house, there's a temperature that barely notices what's happening at the surface. That cool, stable ground has always been there. It was there for the Persians, it was there for the Romans, and it's still there now. And once you understand that, you start to see the modern house differently. Not just as a box that needs to be defended against nature by mechanical means, but as a structure capable of cooperating with it,